After marriage, my husband demanded I pay his $45,000 credit card bill or I'd sleep in the guest room like a roommate. 4 days later, his sister whispered, he did this to his ex too. I stood up during dinner and said, then let's make it public. I'm Mariel. I'm 42 years old, a nurse practitioner in Asheville, North Carolina, and, at the time, all I wanted was a calm life. I had already been through a roller coaster of a marriage in my 30s, and I wasn't looking for drama. I wasn't even actively dating when I met Theo. It was during a continuing education conference in Charleston. I was there for a weekend course on trauma-informed care, and he was giving a finance lecture in the room across the hall. We met during the catered lunch. He asked if he could share my table, and we just started talking. Theo was the type of man who came across like an old book you'd find in a library, clean-cut, well-mannered, thoughtful, and kind of quiet in a way that felt intentional. He wasn't flashy. No big personality, no weird flexes. He told me he was a finance professor at a community college just outside Asheville and that he had a teenage son named Jonah. His wife had left a few years ago, and he'd been focusing on raising his boy and teaching. It felt nice. Grounded. We dated for almost a year. I met Jonah around month 7. He was polite but reserved, clearly wary of women in his dad's life. Theo said he hadn't dated seriously since his divorce, and Jonah didn't trust easily. That made me want to try harder, be better, be safe for him. Theo proposed the following spring. We were on a short trip in Boone, walking along the trails at Moses Cone Park. It wasn't a flashy proposal. No ring hidden in champagne. He just asked me if I saw a future with him, and when I said yes, he slipped a small vintage ring on my finger. We married 3 months later. Small wedding. No drama. Just close family. He moved into my house, the home I bought on my own after my first divorce, a modest but cozy craftsman with a big garden out back. Before the wedding, I asked for a prenup. Not because I didn't trust him, at least, that's what I told myself, but because I'd worked too damn hard to rebuild my life after my ex left me with nothing but credit card debt and a dented car. Theo didn't push back at all. In fact, he barely even looked at the document. Said he respected me for protecting what I'd built. That should have been the first clue. The first few months were fine. Ordinary, even. Which is what I wanted. There were small adjustments. He was more rigid than I expected about money, always tracking my grocery purchases, asking why I didn't use more coupons. I brushed it off as financial professor quirks. He started staying late at work a lot. Said he was helping a colleague write a textbook. I didn't ask too many questions. I work long shifts too, and I get it. Then I started noticing little things. Packages arriving for him even though he said he didn't buy anything new. A new watch he said was a gift from a student. Jonah started acting tense again, like he was waiting for something to fall apart. 3 months in, I came home from an extra shift on a Saturday. I found Theo sitting in the living room with a folder on the coffee table. "We need to talk," he said. I sat down. He opened the folder and laid out a stack of credit card statements. Nearly all of them in his name, some in mine, though I didn't recognize them. "You're better off paying this," he said. "It's $45,000, give or take. Your credit's clean. If it hits mine, I could lose my job. I won't qualify for the refinance we talked about. You understand?" I looked at him like he'd grown a second head. "I'm not paying this," I said. "Why would you think I'd take this on?" He leaned back, as calm as ever. "Well then, we can live like roommates. Separate rooms. Keep things peaceful. But I won't share my bed with someone who won't support me." Support him. Like I hadn't already let him move into my home, cook in my kitchen, share my space, and be a part of my life. I didn't say anything else. I just got up and moved into the guest room. I stared at the ceiling the entire night. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I went to my bank. Turns out, 2 of the credit cards were opened using our shared address right before we got married. One even had my name as an authorized user without my permission. He'd taken out credit using my good name, knowing I wouldn't check. I called my lawyer. She reviewed the prenup. We were good. Solid. I didn't confront him right away. I waited. 4 days later, we were at his sister's house in Charlotte. She was hosting a family dinner. She liked me, I think, but kept a polite distance. That night, we were cleaning up in the kitchen when she leaned in close and said, in a voice only I could hear, "He did this to his ex too." I froze. She didn't look at me. Just kept drying a wine glass. Tina. His first wife. He ran up debt. Made her responsible for it. Said she was unstable when she wouldn't play along. I stared at her. Why are you telling me this now? She sighed. Because you remind me of her. She was kind too. And quiet. And that made it easy for him. My hands were shaking as I walked back into the dining room. Theo was laughing with his cousin. His son was picking at his food. I stood behind him. And said, "Then let's make it public." He turned around, confused. What are you talking about? I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I just laid it out. You forged my name on credit card applications. You tried to corner me into taking on your debt. You did this to your ex-wife, and you're doing it to me. I have the bank statements. The emails. Everything. His aunt's fork clinked against her plate. His cousin went pale. His mother stared at him with wide eyes. Theo stood up and hissed, "Not here." I said, louder, "Here is perfect." He stormed out of the room. And I sat down and finished my dinner. The silence after Theo left the room was thick. No one knew what to say. His cousin, the one who had been chuckling moments earlier, quietly got up and started clearing the dishes, probably just to have something to do. His sister, Simone, stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, watching me with this unreadable look, half guilt, half approval. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't even feel angry in that moment. I felt still. Not numb. Not dissociated. Just still. I looked down at my plate, pushed a piece of grilled chicken around with my fork, and let the moment settle. Theo's mother, a quiet, stern woman named Claudette who rarely looked me in the eye, finally cleared her throat. "Mariel," she said, softly. "Are you sure?" I looked up and met her gaze. I nodded. "Yes. I'm sure." She didn't argue. She just looked tired. Like a part of her knew. Maybe all of her did. Jonah, who had been silent all dinner, stood up and said he wanted to go home. His voice was even, but his eyes looked glassy. He didn't look at me when he left. I stayed at Simone's that night. I didn't want to be in the same house as Theo, not even for a few hours. She made up the guest room without saying much, just placed a clean towel on the bed and handed me a pair of socks. When I closed the door, I didn't cry. I sat at the edge of the bed for a while, staring at the floor. Then I opened my laptop and emailed my lawyer, subject line, "Divorce." Let's do it. The next morning, Simone knocked on my door holding a mug of coffee. "He never thought you'd push back," she said. I nodded, wrapping the robe around me a little tighter. She leaned against the doorway. "He always assumes people will clean up his mess. Especially women. Especially the ones who love him." I didn't respond. I didn't trust my voice yet. "Do you want me to go back to Asheville with you?" she asked. "At least until you get things settled?" I shook my head. "No. But thank you." When I got home later that day, Theo's car was gone. So were a few of his things. But most of his clothes, books, and gadgets were still in the master bedroom. There was a folded note on the kitchen counter. "You embarrassed me. I don't know why you did that. But I'll be out by the weekend." Don't contact Jonah. He doesn't need to be in the middle of this. He signed it with his name. Not love, Theo. Just Theo. I left the note there. I opened every drawer, every closet, every cabinet, and documented everything that belonged to him. I wanted a clean split. I didn't want him coming back months later, demanding a box of tools or some old coffee table. When he came by that Saturday to pack up the rest, I wasn't there. I had the locks changed Monday morning. My lawyer was precise and thorough. Because of the prenup, I was protected. My house, my savings, my retirement accounts, they were all safe. All we had to do was make the separation official. Theo tried to stall the process. Claimed emotional distress. Asked for a cooling-off period. Said he needed time to work things out. I didn't respond. Simone texted me a week later. Simone, he's telling the family you overreacted. That you're financially controlling. That you yelled at him in front of everyone. I replied with a single message. Me, I have receipts. He can say whatever he wants. That week, something strange happened. Tina, the ex-wife Simone had mentioned, found me on Facebook. She sent a friend request and a short message. I heard what happened. Simone told me. If you need someone to talk to who understands, I'm here. You're not crazy. I lived it too. We met for coffee 2 days later. Tina was sharp, witty, a little sarcastic, and clearly still furious years later, but in a way that made me feel seen. She told me everything. How Theo had started small, using her car for errands, slowly adding himself to her Amazon account, making purchases he promised to reimburse later. How he drained their shared savings to cover unexpected work expenses, then blamed her for not budgeting better. How he once told her, if you really loved me, you'd want to build my credit too. How, when she finally pushed back, he told his family she was emotionally unstable. That she had abandonment issues and was bad with money. I lost years untangling myself from him, she said, sipping her cappuccino. Years. I told her I was lucky to have a lawyer who pushed for a solid prenup. She nodded. Smart. He hates women who plan ahead. We stayed in touch. As I started making moves, filing the paperwork, sorting the logistics, returning the few items of his I didn't want, I started to feel lighter. Like I'd been holding my breath for months and could finally exhale. Jonah texted me once. Just once. I'm sorry about everything. I didn't know what he was doing. I hope you're okay. I wrote back, thank you. I hope you're okay too. He didn't reply. But that was okay. I didn't blame him. I still don't. Theo, on the other hand, wasn't done. About a month after he moved out, a burner Facebook account started leaving comments on my professional page, nothing too extreme, but enough to set off red flags. Things like, you shouldn't trust this woman with your health. She's emotionally unstable. She's been through 2 divorces. Wonder why? I reported them all. Blocked. Logged everything. Then one day, I got a call at work from the front desk. There's a man here asking to speak to you. Says it's personal. I already knew. I walked out into the waiting area and there he was, standing near the glass wall like he didn't know where to look. Theo. He looked tired. Older. His clothes were wrinkled, his posture stiff. I need to talk to you, he said. No, I replied. Please. Just 5 minutes. You have a lawyer. Use them. Mariel, I'm serious, I turned and walked away. He stood there for another minute, like he thought I'd change my mind. I didn't. Later that night, I sent a message to my lawyer. Theo showed up at my job today. Please add it to the file. She called me the next morning. You don't need to be afraid of him, she said. But it's smart to stay ahead of him. I was ahead. For the first time in a long time. I wasn't scared. I wasn't shaken. I was just done. The weeks that followed were strange in the way that trauma lingers, not like a sharp pain, but like a low-grade hum beneath everything. I went to work. I laughed at patients' jokes. I charted my notes. I bought groceries. I answered emails. But it all felt slightly detached, like I was watching someone else's life from just behind the glass. There was this weird stretch of time where I didn't know what Theo's next move would be, and I hated that limbo. It was the same kind of waiting I remembered from my first marriage, that feeling of being on edge even when things seemed fine. I'd told myself I'd never let someone put me back in that headspace. And yet, here I was. Again. Only this time, I had leverage. He tried calling. Once from his number. Then from an unknown one. Then a text that just said, "You don't have to do this." I didn't respond. I forwarded everything to my lawyer and blocked the numbers. Theo's sister Simone kept in touch regularly, partly out of support, partly, I think, out of guilt. I appreciated her honesty, even though I sometimes wondered why she hadn't warned me sooner. She admitted she had distanced herself after watching what he did to Tina, feeling helpless and afraid of what it would do to the family. She said it took seeing me go through the same thing to finally speak up. It didn't absolve anything, but I understood. That's the thing about patterns. They stay alive because people stay silent. One afternoon, Simone invited me to lunch at a little bakery cafe tucked behind a used bookstore downtown. It was early spring, the kind of day that made the Blue Ridge Mountains look like someone had brushed a soft watercolor across the sky. She slid into the seat across from me, looking over her sunglasses. "He's been telling people you're mentally unstable. That you had a breakdown and turned vindictive." I sipped my tea slowly, not surprised. Let them think that. I have the paperwork. She leaned in. "I think he's testing the waters. Trying to see if any of your friends or colleagues will take his side." "Has he contacted anyone from your work?" "Not yet." Simone frowned. "Yet." I smiled tightly. "I have everything documented. HR's aware. If he tries anything, he'll regret it." There was a pause. She looked down at her plate and said, "I'm proud of you." It hit me harder than I expected. Not because I needed her validation, but because part of me, buried way down, had needed someone to say that. To tell me I wasn't crazy. That standing up in that dining room, calling him out, drawing the line, that it had been right. Because even with the prenup, the lawyer, the proof, there was still a little voice in the back of my mind whispering, "Maybe you overreacted. Maybe you should have waited. Maybe you embarrassed him for nothing." That voice was his. And it was fading now. Around the same time, Tina reached out again. She was working on a piece for a local newsletter on financial abuse, and she asked if I'd be willing to share my story anonymously. She said more and more women were coming forward, teachers, nurses, business owners, all with the same script. The charming man. The slow entanglement. The financial dependence disguised as partnership. The moment of control. The fallout. I agreed to an interview. No names. Just my voice. I didn't want recognition. I wanted women to know it wasn't just them. 3 days after the piece was published, I got 5 messages from strangers. All women. One of them wrote, "I'm 38. Married for 2 years. My husband just asked me to co-sign a personal loan for his business idea. Something about your story hit me in the chest." I said no. I sat with that message for a long time. Not because it made me feel good, but because I remembered being 38. I remembered saying yes. Meanwhile, Theo was still trying to regain control in small, subtle ways. One day, I got an email from a realtor. Theo had listed my house on Zillow without my knowledge. Not with a legit agency, either. He posted it as "for sale by owner" and used old photos from when it was on the market 5 years earlier. I was furious, but not shocked. I called my lawyer, who sent him a cease and desist letter within 24 hours. 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail. Not typed. Handwritten. It was 3 pages long. Messy, emotionally loaded, alternating between apology, denial, blame, and desperation. Lines like, "I don't know what happened to you. You used to be gentle. I never meant to hurt you, but you blindsided me. We could still make this work if you'd just come back down to earth." I folded the letter and slid it into the envelope without rereading it. I gave it to my lawyer. Every time he tried something like that, it only made the next part easier. The part where I started reclaiming things. The bedroom, first. I changed the curtains, bought a new bedspread, removed the pictures. There was this one framed print he had insisted we hang above the bed, some minimalist abstract art that I never liked. I took it down, replaced it with a small piece I bought from a local artist. Then the guest room. The one I'd been banished to when I said no, I turned it into a reading room. Got a small bookshelf, some candles, a big overstuffed chair. Soft lamp. A blanket that smelled like lavender. Every time I sat in there, it was like telling my past self, "You're home now. Not exiled. Not punished. Home." I started sleeping better. Eating better. Laughing again. The void left by Theo wasn't even a void anymore. It was space. And I was finally filling it with things that felt like me. The process of the divorce was moving along, quietly but steadily. Theo didn't contest it in court, likely because he knew he had no real leverage. The prenup protected everything he wanted to access. His attempts to twist the narrative didn't gain much traction. Too many people had seen the moment I stood up at that family dinner and told the truth. Still, the closer we got to finalizing things, the more anxious I became. Not about losing anything, but about what came next. Because there's something oddly terrifying about peace when you're not used to it. When chaos has been your baseline, calm feels suspicious. But I was learning to sit with it. And more importantly, to trust it. It was early summer by the time the paperwork was almost finalized. The house was officially mine, again, and Theo's name was nowhere near my accounts. My lawyer sent over the near-final draft of the divorce settlement. It was clean. Uneventful. The kind of ending Theo never thought I'd secure. But even with that quiet victory, something in me still felt unfinished. Not bitter. Not vengeful. But unfinished. Because for every sleepless night, for every moment I'd spent questioning myself, walking on eggshells, wondering if I was the one being difficult, he got to walk away and start again. And I knew he would do this to someone else. That was the kind of man he was, quiet, careful, and rehearsed. A man who manipulated with soft language and reasonable tones. The kind that left no bruises, just confusion. Just self-doubt. He needed to be unmasked. But not in some loud, public explosion. I didn't want to scream or rant or ruin his car. I wanted something smarter. Something evident. Something undeniable. So I made a plan. I emailed Tina and asked if she still had any documentation, statements, texts, screenshots, anything from her marriage to Theo. She did. In fact, she had a whole folder. She sent it to me within the hour. Then I compiled my own, the forged card applications, the messages, the shady email trails, screenshots from the burner account trying to smear my name. I even included the real estate stunt, with photos and the cease and desist letter. Then I called a friend of mine named Lori. She's a reporter for a regional women's magazine that focuses on community advocacy and financial literacy. We'd met years ago during a fundraiser. She'd always told me, "If you ever have a story that needs telling, I'm your girl." So I gave her the story. All of it. I didn't use Theo's real name in the article. Legally, we couldn't. But every detail of his behavior, patterned, manipulative, financial abuse, was there. Tina agreed to be interviewed too. So did one other woman who recognized herself in our experiences after reading Tina's first piece. The article came out 3 weeks later. Title: Behind Closed Accounts, The Hidden Abuse of Financial Entanglement. It blew up. Not virally, but locally, which was all I needed. It was shared in nursing forums, PTA boards, women's groups, and eventually made its way into the inboxes of faculty members at Theo's college. I didn't hear anything for a few days. Then Simone texted me one morning, "Simone, he's been put on leave." Me, for what reason? Simone, conduct review. Someone at the school connected the dots. It didn't take much. He's been messing around with a coworker. Guess what? She read the article. I stared at my phone, heart pounding, not from fear. From relief. It was working. I didn't need revenge to look like fire and broken windows. I wanted accountability. And this? This was it. A week later, I got a message from Jonah. It surprised me. He hadn't reached out since the divorce became official. I read the article. "I'm sorry. I didn't know how much of it was real until recently. He tried to get me to say bad things about you. I didn't. Just thought you should know." I replied, "Thank you for telling me. That means more than you know." And it did. Because the truth is, I never blamed Jonah. He was just another person in Theo's orbit, stuck navigating a man who wore charm like a suit. As summer settled in, I started breathing easier. The article gained traction as a teaching tool. Financial abuse was being added to training programs for social workers and counselors in the region. Women began hosting workshops on financial independence. One group even used parts of my story, with permission, as a case study for training legal advocates in domestic support networks. Theo had once told me, "No one will ever believe you." I'd built my reputation for years. Turns out, reputations can be untangled too. Especially when enough threads are pulled at once. In the fall, I was invited to speak, anonymously, on a panel at a financial safety summit for women. Tina sat next to me. We didn't need to say anything to each other. We just held hands under the table while the moderator introduced the session. Later that week, I finally took a long weekend and drove up to the mountains. I stayed in a cabin. Just me. No expectations. No phones. I sat outside with a book, drank wine as the sun dipped behind the trees, and felt peace that wasn't suspicious anymore. It was earned. I didn't feel angry at Theo. I didn't want revenge. But what I did want, what I needed, was truth, heard loud enough that it echoed back into his world. Not to destroy him, but to stop him. And I did. He lost his job. Not immediately, but quietly, without a press release. Students talked. Faculty noticed. That coworker he'd been seeing? She left. Not just him, she left the department. HR was investigating. Rumor was, Theo wouldn't be asked back in the spring. And me? I'm not just fine. I'm better. I bought myself a new dining table. Bigger. More room for people who bring truth, not silence. I've hosted dinners again. Tina comes. Simone comes. Sometimes even Jonah joins. Quietly. No drama. Just presence.